Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are talking about the 2019 film Point Blank, starring Frank Grillo and his nibs.
Anthony Mackie.
That's the man, yeah.
Yeah.
Who is, of course, from all of the Marvel films, and Frank Grillo too has been in several Marvel films.
Yeah, there's lots of Marvel links to this movie, actually. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
So before that, do you have any news, Pete, you'd like to discuss?
Yes, some sad news, which actually, I think this was your news I've just stolen. Mutually sad news about Rutger Hauer, which literally just before the show recorded, we just found out that the Blade Runner and lots of action movies actor has sadly passed away. So we've talked about him in Blind Fury and Surviving the Game. And, you know, anyone who listened to the show before will know I was kind of a video shop 80s and 90s kid. So, you know, I've seen him in lots of films like Wedlock, The Hitcher, Split Second, Salute of the Jugger, all these kind of things, as well as, of course, Blade Runner. So, and I think most recently we probably both saw him in the first series of Last Kingdom, which he's brilliant in. So, it's very, very sad news.
He was 75, and they said he had a short illness, and then that's what led to his death. But yes, he's probably most famous. People remember him for Blade Runner, which of course was not successful at the cinema, but then went on to become such a cult classic and such a hit.
Yeah.
So many more versions, and he just kept being requested to go and talk about it. That so many years later we got Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
So.
I think probably the first time I ever saw him was in the Guinness commercials. He was in the Guinness commercials for years. A very familiar face on British TV from doing that. So, sad news.
Okay. My next bit of news is a bit surprising. Sylvester Stallone recently did an interview with Variety, and he's talking about various projects that he's working on, and one of his concerns, or one of his issues that he still has, is that he doesn't have ownership of the Rocky franchise, and he never has. He received money at the beginning when he first wrote it, because he was brand new to the industry. It made him a star. It gave him a good payout, but he didn't own it. And he's then gone on, of course, to write and direct some of the other ones. Yep. But he's talked about his resentment, the fact that for decades he hasn't had the ownership of the whole franchise.
Yeah, and I read the same article. It looks like he had some kind of bad advice. The interesting thing, though, because I guess we've talked about this before when we covered Rocket, is that he'd written the screenplay as this kind of relatively unknown actor, and they wanted someone like Ryan Neal or Robert Redford to be in it, the studio. And his push was like, you can have my script if I can star in it. And I wonder if that kind of took away his other bargaining chips, if that makes sense. Because if he'd let someone else star in it, he may have been able to push harder for more rights as the writer. But I think it's almost that thing of like, well, hang on, you've written it, you want to star in it, and you want a share of it. So maybe it was that. But but it's weird to think of it. You know, you can't think of not just as, like you say, as an actor, writer, and director. And it seems, and more in the interview, and I think in other interviews he said, essentially, he's written those stories to kind of mirror his own life. And in a way, it's his acting and career and Rocky's boxing career are kind of in parallel. So that does make it more galling, I suppose, when it's such a personal story. Yeah.
The other surprising thing was that when they were wrapping up Creed 2, he shot a video saying, that's it, that's, goodbye to the character, and that's it, I'm all done. But there's now talk that they might be doing another one.
Okay.
He's now said that he might be doing a spin-off film not connected to the Creed one. It's saying that they're talking about a one-time boxing champ, Rocky Balboa, befriending a young street fighter living in the US illegally.
Yeah, that seems to be a topic, like the kind of the issues between kind of Trump and Mexico seems to be a thing, because he also talks about how in the new Rambo Last Blood, I think he's the only non-Hispanic actor. Mm-hmm. And I guess he's always kind of used the films a little bit to kind of push kind of social issues. If you think even the last Rambo, which is like, you know, there's always been an undertone of things, even amongst like hundreds of people getting killed. There's always been an undertone of kind of some political stuff in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting because when I read the same article, and we've talked about it a bit before the show, and I was a bit like, really, do we need that? But then I thought, do you know what? Rocky as a person, if he's still alive and still, it's quite interesting for him to be doing something else.
Yeah.
But and maybe kind of him getting Creed to the point that he's kind of able to go off on his own. I think when we talked about it before, it was like, well, that's great because he can just spend time with his son, he can stay at home. But I guess he just wants to, you know, I guess there are other ways to make that character interesting. Yeah, very surprising though. I would agree. But saying that, I think he does seem to have retired characters quite a few times, then brought them back.
But this was, you know, we'd said that Balboa was the perfect ending, and then this seemed like that was it. The character is done, but the franchise would continue in some capacity without him, with Creed 3 perhaps in the future.
Yeah.
But there's that. And then the other thing is now saying that there's ongoing discussions about a Rocky prequel as a TV series, potentially for a streaming platform.
See, I hate that idea. Personally, because I don't know what you think, but for me it's like his story begins, you know, he's a small-time guy and he's collecting money from people. He is a boxer, but he's not a particularly successful boxer. And then it's only really that the Apollo Creed needs someone to fight. He needs a bum. He needs someone in the area, you know, to fulfill that title card. And that's kind of it. So anything before that, it's a bit like they did Taken TV series as a prequel. It's like so many of these things. It's like, well, the good thing that a really good writer can do is bring you into the story at exactly the right moment. So anything before that, it ruins the magic in a way. And also the casting is like, that would be, I don't know. I can't see some other roles. I don't mind if they do a prequel. You go, oh yeah, that's a younger version of so and so, but I can't imagine who they would get to be Rocky. Yeah, that's. I almost hope nothing comes of that, but I don't wish him any ill.
They said that he potentially wants to do it for TV, and other people connected to it have other ideas. So the prequel may not happen at all. But then there's a bit of contention between the two interested parties. But then there's the thing that they still want it as movies. So they may placate him by letting him do this other spin-off Rocky film. So
yeah, I mean, I would rather it was something with him involved than they go, look, we own the rights. You don't want to do it, fine. Don't worry about it, Sly. We'll just make this, because I think that could be an absolute disaster. You know, his fingerprints, his DNA, it's all over the character, isn't it? More so than Rambo, really. Well, much more so than Rambo, really. Oh, okay. I have mixed feelings.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
there was a video interview actually as part of the same article. I don't know if you saw that, but do you know the reason that he did Stop My Mum Will Shoot?
No.
Because it was Arnold Schwarzenegger told him that he was going to do that film, that he got the script and it was going to be a big hit, another like action comedy, and he really, really wanted to do it. So Sly Stallone kind of pushed his way in and kind of said, no, I'll do it. He did it. And that Arnold was never going to do it in the first place. He was kind of playing a joke on him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but the whole interview is hilarious about how literally for 10 years they couldn't stand the sight of each other. They couldn't be in the same room without it nearly turning into a fight.
Yeah.
And then he said, and then the lady's like, well, so you're friends now? I'm thinking, you obviously haven't done your research, because like everyone knows they're friends now. Mm-hmm. But she goes, well, how are you friends? And he said, because I looked at him and he looked at me and we both realized the reason we don't get on is because we're exactly the same.
Ouch.
And if we're exactly the same, we should probably be friends, and we can do much more together than apart. I mean, there's an element, I think, of both of them. It's like when, Arnie got into politics, Sly's career had kind of gone downhill, and it's interesting they became friends at that point where there was no real rivalry between them. But no, they're firm friends, aren't they?
Yeah. They set up, of course, Planet Hollywood with old Slapper. So.
Yep.
Right. What other news do you have, Pete, before we move on?
I'll drop one because of time. So it's actually Marvel related, because obviously we did the Avengers Endgame episode recently. Still available, everybody. Yep. But it was just two bits of news that felt a bit more action orientated. So the original Blade trilogy, which kind of is the reason the Marvel Universe kind of was able to happen, I guess Blade is coming back, but without Wesley Snipes this time, and he's been replaced by Mahershala Ali, double Oscar-winning actor. So that's quite interesting. I have mixed feelings over the fact that he's been Cottonmouth already in the Cage show. That messes with my head. But yeah.
Don't worry, because the Netflix shows are not there anymore, and they're not connected to Marvel Universe, because none of the actors or those characters appeared in the films. So
that is true.
You can pretend it's a parallel Marvel Universe.
Okay, I shall.
The people have then started pointing this story at Wesley Snipes, and he's now commented back and said, "It's all fine. Don't worry. It was news to me, but I'm cool with it. I'm happy for him. I think he's going to be great in the role. I look forward to seeing it." He said, thank you for all your support and all the fans. And, he's basically said he's still open to doing something with Marvel in some capacity in the future. If they want him to, he's happy to do it. So he's not, he's not saying, kicking off or anything in my character, because it's, which I think is very cool of him.
I'd love to see him as Whistler.
Mm-hmm. That would work so well.
Grow his hair, have a beard. Doesn't even need to mention the fact that he has been obviously before, just as a nod, because he's, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
So the other bit of Marvel news, one of the 1,000 things they seem to have announced at San Diego this year, is one I've been waiting for some time, mainly to kind of cleanse myself from Iron Fist. So Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is a brilliantly martial arts film title. So that's starring Simi Liu, who apparently he was an extra in Pacific Rim, was a stunt double on Heroes Reborn, and has mainly done Canadian TV.
Right.
But I believe he tweeted Marvel saying he wanted to be Shang-Chi, and off the back of that got the chance to audition.
Wow.
And because he's a stunt double guy, obviously he can fight. So he's in it. But the bit that excited me more than that is that the Hong Kong cinema legend Tony Leung, who from Infernal Affairs and a film we've talked about, Hard Boiled, is going to be in it as the Mandarin, the real Mandarin, not the fake Mandarin.
That's what the Ten Rings are about, of course, because from Iron Man 3, they created the Mandarin with Sir Ben Kingsley.
So Ben Kingsley, which a lot of people hate, and I love.
Hello. Yeah, it was a role, playing a role. You'll never see. I get in the role and I play him, and that's it. Thank you.
That's very good.
He was so good. I loved it. I loved the film.
Me too.
It's my favourite Iron Man film, actually. And there's a little extra kind of. Did you know that there's Marvel films, like 8-minute films, 10-minute films? There was another one where basically this reporter goes to prison to speak to Trevor and interview him about playing the Mandarin, and right at the end there's like a weird twist, for those who haven't seen it, suggesting that the real Mandarin is out there and he's not happy. So that would be quite good. Now we're going to see the real Ten Rings and the real Mandarin.
Well, having just seen Spider-Man Far From Home today, which I won't spoil, but they're bloody clever at linking stuff together. They are very clever. Okay, either in retrospect or planned. It's just But I will say no more.
Okay, but yeah, that's it. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing Shang-Chi. It's 2022, I think.
I think so. So I'm going to try and live more healthily, just to make sure that I am still around for that one.
It's only 2 years, Pete. Come on.
Well, no.
You never know what might happen in 2 years. Exactly.
I'm not crossing the road for the next 2 years.
Okay.
I'm not going to take any long flights, just in case, because I'm really looking forward to that. And I think in a post Matrix and then later post John Wick world, then you can have proper Hong Kong action in a Hollywood movie now, which is which makes me very happy.
Into the Badlands, have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, and I need to see it.
You
I
will
know.
absolutely love it. You will love it because of all the Hong Kong kung fu and the wire work and the incredible choreography, and even the name of every episode is amazing. You'll absolutely gobble at it. I think it's done now, unfortunately.
But that's good. That's good in a way, because then I potentially, if I haven't got Amazon Prime, they might release it. Maybe it's a box set, and I could just watch them all.
Yeah.
I quite like things finishing because I know I can watch it. I did the same thing. It took me a long time to get to Battlestar Galactica because it was quite nice going to a show that I knew had finished.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool. Right, we better talk about this movie.
Right. So we're going to be talking about, as we said, Point Blank from 2019. This was a Netflix original film, I believe.
It did, yeah, in the typical Netflix original kind of loose sense of being a Netflix original, because it's actually a remake of a French film.
Oh, okay.
Written and directed by Fred Cavaillé, or as you would say, Cavi.
Yep.
So it's directed by Christophe Lambert was not in that film. It's directed by Joe Lynch, who I've never heard of, and he's done films like Mayhem and Night of Badassdom, which I haven't seen. The screenplay adaptation was by a guy called Adam G. Simon, who's done a film called Man Down with Shia LaBeouf, and he's doing the remake of The Raid, the Hollywood version of that movie. So yeah, but I didn't know until literally when I was just doing my notes, basically, that it was a remake. And then I watched the trailer, and it's a very close remake. Well, there's one big difference actually, but we'll come on to that, I guess, when we get into things in more detail. But it's a good cast in here, as you said. Anthony Mackie, Falcon in the Marvel Universe, and he's also in Hurt Locker. Frank Grillo, also in the Marvel Universe as Crossbones and in Zero Dark 30. So they've both worked with Catherine Bigelow.
Oh yeah.
The hilariously titled Marcia Gay Harden from Mystic River and the Mist. And then a few kind of lesser-known people like British actor Christian Cook, who's from Doctor Who and Demons, who plays Matteo. Mm-hmm. Tiona Harris from Mad Men is the wife in this film, but she's also going to be appearing in WandaVision, Marvel series. She's been cast as Monica Rambeau, also known as Captain Marvel, Photon, Pulsar. So there is, they may get to appear together again. And then there's someone else in this, but I'll come back to them because they're not in it much, but they kind of steal the film for me. So I'll maybe talk about them when we get to that bit.
I've just realised I have seen Knights of Badassdom.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
You surprised me.
Well, I'm trying to think it was on Netflix or something else. No, I taped it, I think, on tape. Listen to me. On the box. Taped it on the box.
On Betamax.
Yeah, it was. It's like a film about a group of LARPers.
Okay, with Peter Dinklage in it.
That's it. And something goes wrong, and one of the people who's supposed to be a mage there has actually got a real book that he's picked up from an old antique bookshop, and he accidentally summons a real demon, and then it starts killing a bunch of people there, and they have to try to actually fight the real demon in the middle of this giant LARP escapade over a weekend. It turns into quite a grisly kind of horror film. It's fun. It's quite good fun.
That actually sounds really good.
Silly fun, yeah. Probably not what worth us doing a whole episode on, but
no, but
there you go. So back to Point Blank.
Sorry, I'm just easily distracted.
Film
like a magpie.
Starts with a bang. We're not going to do our old school blow by blow.
No.
I'll give a quick summary of what it's about.
Yep.
So to save his pregnant wife, an emergency room nurse, Paul Booker, I believe, played by Anthony Mackie, has to team up with an injured criminal and murder suspect from the hospital, and they're racing against other criminals and renegade cops who are trying to stop them.
Yes.
And that's kind of it. And from the first you get 5 seconds of silence, and then there's a gunshot, and the film doesn't really let up. No.
And it's pretty explosive, did you find the start really unsettling because the camera work is kind of like all steady cam and stuff, and you're moving around loads. It's quite deliberately, I think, disorientating.
Yeah.
And then there's a crash, which kind of, it's not very often you kind of properly jump in your seat, but I did. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
no, I think it's
the car crash thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. That was a really kind of oh shit moment when it happened, because things you're like, oh, things are going well, things are okay, and then boom, out of nowhere, Those kind of effects always catch me by surprise.
It reminded me of years ago, Meeting Joe Black. Did you ever see that Brad Pitt film with Anthony Hopkins? There's a car accident in that you just don't see coming. I guess that's the key with a car accident. If you did see it coming, it wouldn't be a car accident.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So the film is only an hour and just under an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it's pretty relentless. There's lots of action. To begin with, I thought Paul Booker was a bit of a coward. I mean, he gets beaten up by a guy half his size in the hospital. And I kept thinking, come on, fight back a bit. But I suppose he's a nurse. He's not.
What I did quite like about it is, because I was waiting for this reveal of, actually, I used to be a Secret Service nurse, or I was in the military. Yeah. And it's been a long, I guess the closest thing to this in a way is Death Wish, because he's a surgeon, but he goes completely the other way. But it was quite nice not to be like Taken or something where the person pulled into this thing has actually got a load of a special set of skills that's going to help him. Yep. He's just got his medical skills and just his kind of, just his ability to kind of get through stuff. And I thought that was I thought that was really good, and I thought the relationship with him and his wife was really well done. The fact she's heavily pregnant makes it quite uncomfortable watching a lot of the time. Which has been carried over from the original.
I mean, there is an evolution of his character. Later on, he starts to get a little bit involved, and there's a fight in the car wash. He kind of jabs someone with a car wash pole. And then later on, he does actually hold a gun and he shoots a couple of people. So there's this thing of, as things get more and more desperate, he's rising to the occasion. So there's an arc for the character, whereas at the start he doesn't immediately turn around. But it was a bit of a surprise, probably because I'm used to seeing Anthony Mackie's characters in films as someone who are much more formidable. Yeah,
he's kind of cast against type in a way, because you think for something like that they may have gone with more of a, not necessarily a comedy actor, but maybe more of a drama actor that you haven't really seen anything action based. But he's really unassuming in the role as well. It's quite kind of, he's just very focused on his wife, as I guess you would be in that situation. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that kind of, maybe I'm going to go too far too soon, but there was I guess it's even in the premise that the kind of the role that the police play is kind of obvious from like 5 minutes in.
Yeah,
it's not from as soon as Lieutenant Lewis, which is Marcia Gay Harden's character, as soon as the first sentence she utters, my wife and I kind of looked at each other and went, yeah, it's her.
Well, the thing is, the other actor, Boris MacGyver, he always plays dodgy cops.
Yeah.
In every program and every film I've ever seen him, when he turns up, he's a dodgy cop. And in this,
I think
he looked like the straight person.
Yeah.
So he looked like the dodgy one. She looked like the straight one. And he's kind of nice to her. He's sympathetic. He's showing emotion. He's saying, "You go home, I'll deal with it." Blah blah. And I thought, yeah, it's him.
Yeah.
He's dodgy. Look at his face. He always does it. That was kind of against type for me. And suddenly it's like, oh no, he was the red herring. Maybe they did that on purpose. Maybe they cast him.
I think you might be right, because in these films you tend to find being that nice and helpful is usually a front. It nearly always, isn't it? Whereas actually with him, he genuinely was okay. And I think maybe you were meant to think they were in it together, because I was more shocked that she turned on him than the fact it was her pulling the strings in the first place. Because there's a line about her having blood and stuff on her at the start, and it just didn't ring true for me. Yeah,
but it's like he kept saying he knows her, and he's like, "You're not going to do it," and then she does. So that was kind of a surprise as well.
Yeah. He thinks she's a little bit dodgy, and maybe like in a lot of films, like they're like 10% kind of slightly bending the rules and doing stuff they shouldn't. But he didn't realise that she's fully a problem. This is quite an understatement, really. Because we're going to jump all over the place as normal, but it was shocking enough, even though I knew the premise, that the brother, Abe's brother, kidnaps the pregnant wife to use as kind of leverage. and that was bad enough. And then they kind of start to bond, and you kind of start to see that it's going to be okay, and like it's a reluctant situation for them.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the police take her, I'm like, why? I know I can see how it would work, but it's like, will everyone just stop grabbing this heavily pregnant woman and throwing her around the place?
But it seems a bit weird that the guy shoots him, and he's he's the only person that knows where the data thing is. I'm like, hang on, you wouldn't have just shot him in the chest. You just got rid of your only lead to getting this data, and it's like, yeah, now you're relying on someone else. That's a little bit of a kind of plot hole in the film. But I was like, okay. If he's a cop as well, he's supposed to be a cop. The guy, dodgy as he is, from narcotics. It's like, that was something that bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There are a few things in here you go, really? But it kind of, I think, had this, it does in some ways, until I knew it was a French film from not that long, from only like 9 years ago, adapted.
Right.
It felt to me like an 80s or 90s script somebody maybe had in a drawer.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but like, because it has that kind of 48 Hours or Three Fugitives, which is a film I could talk about all day. Not just films with Nick Nolte. Yes, they're both films with Nick Nolte, but it had that kind of vibe. And I thought, well, maybe this is kind of, Netflix are looking for material. But what lifted it for me was there's the two leads. Yeah. They're both really good in everything that they're in anyway. Mm. So they elevate the film, I think, from maybe what it could have just been on paper. And they kind of, the fact they're in it kind of, I probably allowed the film to get away with things that I maybe would have been more critical on if it had been more of a kind of B-movie cast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, Frank Grillo, his character isn't a nice guy. It's not like he's an undercover cop, that was my first thought was, he's actually an undercover cop, and blah, blah, blah. Then you realise, no, actually, he is a criminal. He's a criminal. Him and his brother have always been doing this for years. They're not pretending. This is their life.
The trailer made me think he might have been a undercover cop.
Yeah, and then
he kept saying there's more to this than you realise, and you think, but it's not that. It's the fact he's unearthed this kind of shadowy police network, really.
Yeah, and that kind of fed into the whole buddy cop thing, where you think, strange partnership where he's a nurse and he's a criminal, but actually he's an undercover cop. Then you realise, no, he's not. He's just a guy who's in a very difficult situation, who owes money to lots of different people, and he did this job thinking it would get him out of a hole. And that he always looks after his brother and the two of them, and this was just the next job. But of course, it all went pear-shaped from the minute he went in the house. Yeah. The guy was already dead. So it was. And
it's interesting because a lot of the kind of spine of this film, in a way, is you get to kind of know the brothers. You get to know Abe and Matteo, and you think they're not as bad as they maybe started off seeming like, and particularly Matteo. But then I was there thinking, well, he still has beaten the crap out of Paul twice.
Yep.
And he still dragged a pregnant woman around the place. Now, admittedly, he is getting her water and food, and he is talking to her, and he's being quite pleasant to her now. But that doesn't cancel out the stuff that went before. That's the big difference, actually. When I read up about the French version, I watched the trailer for that with like trying to remember kind of schoolboy French. Yeah. And in that, the person in the hospital is still a nurse. It's the same central character, but instead of it being a criminal and a brother, it's a crime boss that's in hospital, and it's one of his henchmen or one of his team that's trying to get his boss out.
Right. Okay.
But that to me would, if it was that would make this a very kind of straight line kind of film. Whereas what I liked about this is there's a little bit more to it with the relationships, not just. There's kind of two things going on. There's kind of Abe and Paul getting to know each other better, and I don't know if they really became friends, but they certainly got to more of an understanding.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his wife and the brother, she's kind of trying to understand him as a way to get out of her predicament. And I quite like that kind of. There's two stories going on at once, really.
Yeah, because she keeps saying you don't want to do this, and he doesn't do the thing that you see in other films, which I liked as well. He doesn't just go, you don't understand, and like get angry and try and hit her or do something like that. He's actually listening. He actually talks to her, and she gets through to him, and then he says, oh, but I need to call my brother. And she's like, no, you don't. He says, no, I do. And she's like, she only realizes that's the kind of as far as she can get, because he always relies on his brother, and whenever he gets to a difficult decision, he calls his brother. And so she's going to have to kind of do it by herself, and then the cops get involved, and so it all kind of spins out of control. But she was making progress on her own. She wasn't just waiting for her husband, Paul, to come and rescue her.
Yeah. And I really like that, because when I saw the trailer and when I saw the premise, I thought, okay, this character's basically just going to be a woman screaming and holding her stomach for an hour and a half. And it's really good that, you know, she kind of fights her way out. Again, it's uncomfortable to watch at points where she's trying to fight her way out of something while 3 weeks away from giving birth.
Yep.
But she is, like I say, she's smart, and she kind of talks him round, gets under his skin a little bit, and gets more of an understanding, which yeah, I think was a good thing. And there's some, in a way, the action is kind of second to the drama, but it's handled really well. So there's a scene that, if anyone's, hopefully you've seen the film because we're talking all the way around it, but it kind of wish it wasn't in the trailer in a way. And in the French film trailer, it's actually done with, he just pulls a gun out,
right?
But in this, yeah, he's kind of convinced the cop that's watching the room that he needs to take Abe off for some tests, I think it is, or something. So takes him off with a defibrillator, and then manages to do, like, you know, jump start and jump stop, I suppose, the policeman, which I thought was a clever bit of, you know, you're in a hospital and he's thinking on his feet really quickly. And that's the way he gets him out, which is really good. And then, you know, there's the whole thing where Abe is a really good driver and stuff. So no, it's there's some good bits. Like you said, the fight in the car wash is really good, and then it lends the tone is a little bit. Times there's some really funny moments. It's not a full-on kind of action comedy,
no,
but there are some funny moments. And they're most of the time at the right place. At the car wash scene, there's a funny bit with the old lady, but in the last half an hour, the comedy seems to be ramped up, even though the jeopardy is as well. That I found a little bit. Well, hang on, mate. You're all laughing, but your wife is still with the police, you know, at gunpoint. But I thought there was the guy. What I quite like as well is all the way through they're talking about Big D. Big D is this guy that the brother is really scared of. He's the main guy. They owe money. They owe him money, and they've given his money to someone else.
Yeah.
And then you meet him, and he's not at all what you expect.
No.
But I thought the guy who plays him, Marquise Moore, who I think he's been in a couple of episodes of Walking Dead. I haven't seen him in much else, but he kind of steals the show a little bit. Him and his crew. And they help at the end, and that's, you know, that was some, I guess in a way it was some welcome light relief from a kind of relentless kind of load of stuff that had happened before.
But they play that up, you see, because they're calling him Big D all the time, and you keep seeing these scary text messages saying you're in trouble, it's this, that, and the other, and Mateo's really worried. And then when they get to the house, he goes, "Yo, Big D," and a massive bloke comes out the door and stands there, and you go, "Whoa, Big D is really big." And then someone goes, "Hey there," and he comes around, there's a tiny little dude, and that's him, and you're like, "Oh, that's Big D. Oh, okay, I get it." But the character is brilliant. He's like this film obsessed. He's like, "I'm showing these guys some proper movies, not just Scarface." And he's like, he knows all this film trivia and all this kind of stuff. And then when they're doing that, they basically stage a scene and they create a diversion for Paul and Abe, and he treats it like it's a film. Like he's the director, and he's like, "Action! You do this, and then go there, and this. I want all of them. Get zoomed closer. I don't have you." And he's directing the whole thing like it's his masterpiece. And that was funny, but a bit weird with everything else that was going on.
It did feel like it came from nowhere, but it was interesting. I say, the guy kind of did a brilliant performance there.
He did steal every scene he was in.
Yeah.
Like Frank Grillo, there were some funny moments, but when he's up against this guy, nothing. He just looked really kind of po-faced, because you can't try and go any higher than this guy. He was so good, so funny. Physically, he was good as well. It wasn't just what he was saying; it was the way he delivered it. He was brilliant.
Yeah, yep, I would agree. I quite like the way that Paul how he gets to stick with Abe, because although the plan is the plan, Abe would quite happily ditch Paul.
He tries to at one point and says, "You'll get your wife back when it's sorted, and she'll be fine." Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, I know your meds, actually, and you don't know what the mix is, so you can carry on, and maybe you'll collapse, or I can stick around as your kind of medical thing." I quite like that. That was the kind of first time he showed some real backbone. But again, it's like I quite like thinking about it more. It isn't like a nurse who's suddenly grabbing knives and guns.
Developed a special set of skills from nowhere.
Yeah.
Really?
No,
really?
Which does happen in quite a lot of films. But it's a nurse who goes, okay, I know how to use a defibrillator. I'll use that.
Yep.
And okay, what hold have I got over this guy? Okay, well, I know his meds. Fine, I've got. So he's using the fact he's a nurse in an effective way, in a way that works. So which I liked. And the Matteo stuff is quite heartfelt, I think, because they finally get you to the point where you kind of care about both of the brothers. Again, I still have problems with the fact of what he's done, but you kind of go, okay, they're not as bad as you think. This is just a circumstances thing, and the whole pick up the gun moment with the dirty cops and stuff.
Yeah.
So well, again, hopefully you've seen it, but Matteo's death is quite heartfelt, and yeah.
Well, we always spoil the film, so that's not a problem.
We do.
We're talking about it. I think you're right. I came in thinking it was going to be lots of action, and even though the pace is quite relentless, it does kind of go up and down in terms of action scenes. You get very tense moments where there's nothing happening at first. There's that scene in the pawn shop where they're going to get a car and get some help from one of Abe's friends, and then everything kind of goes pear-shaped. And then there's some action, then there's a car chase, and then he's relying on people. And there's the callback to the old guy that he knew from the hospital. And so there's all these little nice touches where it's that thing of you show something in the first scene and it pays off later on. They're good at doing that throughout the whole of this film.
Yeah, and I think as well, like some films would have we're going to go and fight these people in order to get to these people, But this is the opposite of that in a way. They just want to get away and, pass on this information. So every time they fight, there's a reason for it. They're not going looking for trouble. It's just these are the obstacles that are in their way. Oh, these people have turned up. I need to fight them then, which I thought was quite refreshing in a way. That it's more of a pursuit film, I suppose, than anything else. Like it's a more action-packed version of The Fugitive or something.
Yeah. So I was going to say we're spoiling it anyway. So we find out that Lewis is obviously corrupt and stuff, and there's a lot of thing to do with the flash drive that is the key thing in the film that they've been going after has all this information on all of the dirty cops that Abe gave to his brother, that Matteo's then hidden, that he then retrieves from the place once Matteo's dead. But then there's the bit in the pawn shop where they've recorded the information because the guy, Cheetah, says, look at so-and-so. So then he has to retrieve that, and that's even more evidence, which he then gives to the news guy and says, do you want an Emmy or something like that? He says to him.
Yeah, I felt that all a bit like kind of MacGuffin within a MacGuffin. I found a little bit contrived.
Right.
And I found it a little, I don't know. It was, like you said before, really, I wasn't necessarily convinced of who they were killing and why and stuff. That could just be me, my inability to follow a film.
Were you dozing, Pete, whilst you were watching this film?
No, I wasn't, honest. I wasn't. No? I promise. Okay. I wasn't.
Okay.
But, some of it reminded me a bit of Rapid Fire, the Brandon Lee film that we watched, purely because that has like evidence about somebody and a well-used MacGuffin, kind of, but with and a tape. Although he supposedly had no real, skills, but he had extremely good martial arts ability, which is a little bit different from this.
Yeah, I was going to say the central bad guy in this film, of course, is a bad girl, if you like, Lewis, and he gets that moment where you, despite the fact that they've been saying that Abe isn't a good guy and he's a criminal and he's not, undercover cop, I wasn't completely sure about what he was going to do, but then he's shown his human side to Paul and Paul's wife and to his brother, of course, but he obviously wants revenge for what's happened, but he doesn't take it in the way you would expect it, which I think was a nice touch. It was against type for the kind of characters that Frank Grillo plays and the kind of thing that you'd see in this sort of a film.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, that's very true.
But I also like the fact that he didn't hold back. Like, he didn't do that thing where, because it's a woman, he just let her go. It's like, no, he still knocked her out by cold cocking her, and then gave the evidence where everyone can find it and gave her a gun. And it's like, okay, it's your choice now. So he left it up to her But either way, she was still in trouble, and of course everybody's coming after her, and she takes the easy way out, which was a shocker for me.
Yeah. I think the one thing I'd say is the last kind of 50. It wrapped up very quickly. Felt to me, it felt like it suddenly raced to the end.
Right.
I mean, it was nice in a way having a film that's like 85 minutes long. That's quite refreshing. But I don't know, it felt like it maybe could have done with a little bit longer. But I guess again, the original film was a similar length. So the other thing that really threw me is why all the music was all 80s music.
Right.
Unless it was because this is like an 80s buddy cop film, but it was set now.
Yeah.
But I think pretty much all the songs were from the 80s, which confused me.
I hadn't noticed.
Yes.
Okay.
Enough with the yakety yak. What is your score?
So, are we about ready to give it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
Shall I? Yeah, go on then.
Go on then.
Okay, I will. Yeah, I like this. It was a bit predictable, and I say, kind of working out kind of who the big bad was so early. Was a little bit frustrating, but then I guess not every film has to be about a mystery. Sometimes it's just about what happens.
Yeah.
So it did lack surprises from that perspective. I really liked the camera work at the start, which stopped it feeling like every other movie. I did think it was a tiny bit dated, but the two leads kind of carried it. I don't know. It's why we've talked about some other films. It felt like there felt like one element missing, but I don't know what that element was that would have made it stronger.
Okay.
It was a solid film, but then I suppose not every film can be the best film ever, but it also doesn't have to be the worst film ever. There are films that are just a good film, and I think this kind of, for me, smacks right in that kind of. It's a really good film. I enjoyed it, but I may not watch it a second time. So on that basis, I'm going to give it a very solid 3 bags of action.
Okay. When I first put it on, I thought it was going to be like 2.5 hours, and I thought, okay, I've got the time, I'll sink into it. Then I saw it was only an hour and a half, and I thought, right, okay, this is either going to be very light or a very fast film, and it was the latter. It was a minute in, something happens, boom, and you're off to the races. And even though the pace went up and down with the drama, as we've talked about, it didn't skimp on that, which if you compare to this to like a film like Crank, which I know you're not a fan of anyway, that film doesn't stop ever, and there's very, very little character development at all because it's completely relentless due to the premise of that film. So I like that this took the time to develop the Anthony Mackie character, his wife, but also Abe and his brother. We got a little bit of the relationship between the cops, so you got to see that they're not just two-dimensional. There's a past there that was built into the dialogue. It was all it felt real, it felt lived in, and not just they've walked on from off the left side of the camera, off stage left, and suddenly, oh, hello, yes, we are old friends. It was like, no, I don't buy it. But this, maybe it's the actors, maybe they just brought something to it and they really elevated the material. But it worked. It worked for me, and I believed all of the performances. A couple of problems, I said, a couple of plot holes and little things that bugged me. The actor, Marcus Moore, who played Big D, brilliant, stole every scene he was in. But the comedy did feel a little bit out of place at times, even though I enjoyed it. Yeah. So, a good film, a solid film, as you say. It was worth seeing. Probably not one I'd watch again in a hurry, because I don't think you'll get much more out of it a second time. But yes, I'll also give it a solid 3 bags out of 5.
Nice.
Okay.
There we go. So, shall I reveal what we're going to do next month?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so there is a link between this film and the film we just talked about, in that it is also a film that was a remake of a French movie.
Okay.
So, it stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, reuniting with longtime collaborator James Cameron, and it's from 1994, and it is True Lies.
Ah, okay. Yes, of course, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Arnold, of all people.
Yes. Tom Arnold, who I literally physically walked into in Hollywood. I turned the corner, and we smacked into each other and knocked each other over.
Oh, dear.
And I said, I'm sorry. And he went, I'm sorry. And then I just went, Tom Arnold, and then he walked off.
Yeah. Okay.
It was very surreal. It was very surreal.
I like
what I want to say
story.
was, will you come on I'm going in many years in the future. I will do a podcast and I will talk about True Lies. Would you like to come on it? But I didn't
If
think.
you've got
I
a
just
time
didn't, I
machine,
just didn't
that's
think.
where you're going back to that moment.
That is.
To tell
exactly.
your old self. That's the only
To
thing.
do that.
What would you do? I tell Arnold and say, in 2019, can you come on this podcast? See what he says, just to freak him out.
Yeah.
Anyway, True Lies, yes. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about it. I have seen it before. I've seen it a few times. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. That'll be good.
Okay.
Eliza Dushku, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jamie Lee Curtis.
And Art Malik.
Yes, Art Malik, of course. Of course. There's some interesting behind-the-scenes stories we can talk about. I've got an anecdote from him that he talked about years later that I'll share on the podcast next month. Okay.
There you go.
Have you seen Point Blank? What did you think? If so, if not, we spoiled a lot of it, but you can still go and watch it on Netflix. So get in touch with us in all the usual ways. You can email us, bagsofaction@gmail.com. Don't forget to go onto the Facebook group and join us there. Of course, we're also on we're also now... We're also now on YouTube, so don't forget to check out all of the other episodes on YouTube and subscribe to the channel there. We're also putting up 5-minute movie reviews. Me and Peter doing those for films that aren't worth a whole episode, but they're good that we have a quick chat about and just blast through in 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for this episode. Pete?
Indeed. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.